and welcome back to my channel. If you're just joining me, welcome. My name is Ursula. I'm an indie author of historical fiction. I primarily do booktube and authortube related content. Today I'm very excited to be talking to you guys about a beautiful book which I read in the summer of 2002, The Play of God by Devi Vanamali, about the 125-year life of Krishna and the events leading up to his conception and birth. And of course, I'd just like to preface this by saying I'm not a Hindu myself. I studied Hinduism in I guess a fair amount of depth my freshman year of high school in my global studies class, and again in world religions class my freshman year of community college. And I've been a passionate lover and student of world religions for much of my life, because I just absolutely love theology and spirituality and religion and such. But as not being a Hindu myself, I can't pretend to speak with authority as a Hindu. This is just my opinion as someone who absolutely loves Indian mytho-history and Hinduism and religion and things like that. So don't take my word for it. Hopefully I will get everything accurate and have respectful opinions and such, but please remember, I'm not trying to pretend to speak with authority as a Hindu. This is just a beautiful book I absolutely loved, and I do have great love and respect for Indian culture. As I mentioned, the reason I got my left nostril pierced originally, I'm also planning to get the right side done hopefully soon, but the reason I got the left done was because that's the side traditionally done in India, and I thought that was pretty cool because I love Indian religion and culture and history and language so much. So let's just get into it. So I wrote this book review for my old Angel Fire site that was very many years ago. That must have, it was definitely over 10 years ago. And of course, as always, I'll be fleshing out with some of my own opinions and such as things come to me, and filling out some things I left out of the review. And it is pretty long, but hopefully you'll really like it. This is a really book I absolutely loved, and I just love Hinduism and Indian culture. I just can't say enough good things about it. This is a very moving and exciting book by Devi Vanamali, all about the life of Vishnu's 8th avatar, Krishna. Unlike other books, this one is special in that it covers Krishna's whole life, not just his youth or his role in the Mahabharata. For example, I'm told many other books about Krishna only cover those certain aspects of his life instead of covering all 125 years. And Ms. Vanamali, a fervent devotee of Krishna, said that it came to be shown that Krishna never existed and was just a myth. Hindus would hardly care. The basis of their faith wouldn't be blown to pieces. The spirit and message of the Krishna story are the important parts, not whether or not this person actually once drew breath and did all the things he's credited with doing in his most greatest avatar. Vishnu takes on an earthly avatar whenever the need for divine help is most great, and in each succeeding avatar he's only gotten more and more important, going from small animals like turtles to eventually human beings, the two greatest of which have been Lord Rama and His Holiness Krishna. He doesn't do this to try to save the world or to redeem humankind from sinning, but rather because there are evil and danger afoot, and people need help from above. He also bestowed enlightenment on many people as Krishna, and taught them the beauty and simplicity of his teachings. Reading this book reawakened my interest in Hinduism, and almost made me wish I were one myself. And I've mentioned previously, Hinduism is the religion which I have long felt closest to after my own Judaism. It's just such a wonderful, beautiful religion. It was one of the religions I seriously considered when I was learning about different religions and thinking which one I wanted for my own. Long story short, kind of off topic, my parents deliberately didn't give me or my little brother religion so we could choose our own. When we were 18, my family background and personal religious history are extremely complicated, far too complex to get into here, but suffice it to say, I just love world religions, and Hinduism in particular I feel a very close bond to. And also I've noticed a lot of anti-Semites and Israel bashers are also extremely Hindu-phobic and anti-Indians, and actually India is really the only major world nation that has no real history of anti-Semitism, and a lot of Indians feel a very close bond to the land of Israel and the Jewish people. So that's just something really lovely and beautiful to keep in mind. And so here comes the story, which I know much of this by heart. I could definitely tell this to children or other people if they wanted to hear the story instead of just reading off of the screen or from a book. Kamsa is a very evil king, but on his 16-year-old sister Devaki's wedding day to the handsome prince Vasudeva, he's the picture of loving kindness. During the wedding parade, however, catastrophe strikes, and a divine voice tells him that Devaki's eighth-born son will one day kill him. He's horrified by this, but soon placated when he realizes he's got a good long way to go, and he can prevent this from happening since he's been tipped off. Devaki obediently brings all of her newborn sons to her brother, but he's lenient and lets the parents keep them. The people he rules over are overjoyed at the prophecy, hoping Devaki has her eighth sons very quickly, so King Kamsa will meet his end all the sooner. But of course, in all, probably like the vast majority of all these like ancient like myths and religious books and such, of course, all these women have only boys and like rarely even have like one token daughter. That's just not biologically realistic. But this is how the story was written and came down to us. We can't argue with how it was. The party ends when a nasty advisor to the king suggests that Vishnu is the master trickster and that maybe Kamsa's assassin is already here, since if you put the 6 sons Devaki now has in a circle, combined with the next 2, any one of them could be the 8th, depending on where you start counting from. Kamsa promptly murders his 6 nephews and throws Devaki and Vasudeva into prison. During this time, Devaki gets pregnant yet again, but Vishnu realizes how important it is to hurry it up, though the fetus within her womb is magically transferred into another woman's womb, and thus Krishna is able to be conceived. This 7th pregnancy became Balarama, who is Krishna's half-brother. Vasudeva had another wife. Like pretty much everyone in these Indian myth, or at least the men, of course, had multiple spouses. Devaki and Vasudeva are chained to opposite walls of the prison, so they won't be able to have sex. And radiant light pours into their cell as Krishna is conceived from the power of their strong thoughts. Kamsa is infuriated and terrified when he learns his little sister somehow got pregnant again, the 8th time. He rushes down into the prison after she gives birth and beholds that the baby is a girl, the goddess Mahamaya, who took the place of baby Krishna after he was spirited off to an older childless couple named Yashoda and Nanda. Yashoda had given birth to a girl. By the time her husband came back into the house, he was happily surprised to find it had become a boy in the time he was away, because of course, they strongly preferred male offspring, and like a lot of Indian mytho-history and many ancient cultures, unfortunately, that's, just the way things were, the strong preference for like sons above all else, and like a daughter was seen as like, misfortune and a curse if it happened at all. When Kamsa tries to fling the baby to her doom, she reveals herself as the powerful goddess she is, and flies off to assume many other forms around the world. Devaki, who's still in prison, doesn't have any more children after this, and Kamsa rests a little easier, though always fearful that at any moment Vishnu, that master trickster, could murder him. In fact, during Devaki's 8th pregnancy, Kamsa was more concentrated on Vishnu than anyone else, constantly seeing him in everything, even grains of rice. His total concentration on Vishnu alone was born out of fear instead of religious piety, but he was still more focused on him than even the religious aesthetics, and like a lot of like religious people like kind of praised him for this devotion, even though of course it was for totally like the wrong reason, not like genuine religious piety. Krishna has a lovely childhood as the adored only child of his foster parents' old age. He's very popular with the other children, and only continues to be so the older he gets, since he performs many miracles, most of them related to saving his village from demons who have been sent to try to murder him. Krishna also grows up with his slightly older half-brother Balarama, the child of Vasudeva's other wife, Rohini. The gopis, the milkmaids, are the most devoted followers Krishna ever has, and he teaches them to transcend the concept of modesty, so they can serve him with a purer heart. If they're ashamed to appear naked before him, how dare they claim they're devoted to serving him and laying their hearts and souls bare before the divine? And I told my father this story at one point, and he was like laughing. Oh, Krishna just like wanted to get his jollies off of them. And I said, okay, he was only like 12 years old. I was like, oh, he definitely wanted to get his jollies off of them. But in this, Hinduism, like nudity isn't seen as like shameful, like it mostly is in the West. It's just like laying yourself like totally bare and surrendering to the divine. It's not like necessarily like a sexual experience, although of course it does get sexual in the story, because Krishna does have sex with all the gopis at the same time. He's in the same place at multiple times. The seduction and enlightenment of the devoted gopis is his last mission in the village of his youth, before he knows it's time to go home to do what he took on this avatar to do, slay Kamsa. Krishna and Balarama are conquering heroes whom the people adore, and Kamsa gets his just desserts when his divine nephew takes him out. Devaki and Vasudeva are also finally sprung from prison. Of course, everyone wants Krishna to be their new leader, and he's an exemplary king, taking many wives and concubines, and having 10 sons by each of these 10,000 plus women. Would it be too unrealistic to throw in a few daughters once in a while? And after he comes back to free his biological parents from prison and go to his hometown, Yashoda and Nanda are a little worried and scared because they're not his full-time only parents anymore, and he reassures them he still loves them and holds them as his real parents. They were the one who loved him and raised and protected him and took care of them, and of course he loves his biological parents too, but he loves them in a different way than the parents who actually raised him, which is a really beautiful, wonderful message about the power of adoption and loving an adopted child and an adopted parent just as if they were your flesh and blood. Krishna's first wife, and the one he loves best, is Rukmini, the avatar of Vishnu's consort Parvati. Women love Krishna, and he's able to be the model husband and lover to all these many women at the same time, and all the mansions he's put them up in. No task is too great for the almighty Krishna to handle. Krishna's story intertwines with that of the Pandavas and Kauravas, antagonistic relatives who share the same grandfather, Bhishma. Yudhishthira, Bhima, Arjuna, and the twins Nakula and Sahadeva make up the Pandavas, who are just the models of goodness, virtue, and everything wonderful and positive in the world. They don't know it yet, but they find out later in the story, much too late, for it to really make a difference. But the mother of the older boys, Kunti, had an immaculately, illegitimately conceived child, Karna, with the sun god before any of them were born, and this boy was taken in by their enemies, the Kauravas. They unknowingly are fighting their own half-brother in the battle that comes up later on, and the reason Kunti invoked this special blessings he had to conceive a child for the wrong reasons before she had a husband, and she's later totally humiliated when she discovers Krishna knows she had a so-called bastard son. It's oh my lord, who told you that? I am so embarrassed that you know. He told her don't be ashamed. I know you had this baby when you were a maid, and it's not a big deal to me, and just goes on from there with their friend relationship. Because of the curse, it's morally dangerous for their father Pandu to have sex, so they're actually sired by various gods. Kunti has a special trick to conceive by a god, which as I just mentioned, she did for the wrong reasons when she had Karna, and she teaches it to Madri, Pandu's other wife, since Madri wants children too. Madri is the mother of the young twins. The Kauravas are 100 brothers, with the token sister. That's kind of nice to actually mention a girl in the family for once, who are the absolute epitome of evil, selfishness, greed, sacrilegiousness, you name it. Their equally evil and repugnant father, Dhritarashtra, is blind, and their mother, Gandhari, like a typical Indian wife, at least for much of history, is so blindly devoted to him, no pun intended, that she voluntarily ties a blindfold around her eyes, vowing that she shouldn't have the pleasure of seeing the wondrous sights her husband will never be able to see. Many events go on between the cousins, which are far too long and detailed to get into here, including the attempted murder of the Pandava brothers, their presumed death, 13 years of exile, and finally all-out war. And it's one of the most intense, dramatic moments in their story is the reason they came to be into exile. They're playing a game of dice with very high stakes with the Kauravas, and according to some versions of the story, these dice are made of bones that can never disobey the Kauravas because they will do whatever they will, and so they're basically playing for really high stakes. They'll get them the kingdoms of the Pandava brothers, and eventually I believe the Pandavas themselves as slaves, and they're not invoking any of the gods or goddesses as they're rolling their dice. They're just getting totally into the game and just being totally hopped up on power or an excitement, and not thinking what this will actually mean, and then they proceed to lose all of their kingdoms and become slaves, and then finally, as if their humiliation and loss isn't enough, Yudhishthira, the oldest brother, puts up their wife Draupadi as a stake in the final game of dice, and of course he loses yet again, and so she's dragged into the court by her hair, and her husbands are absolutely furious about how their wife is being manhandled, and they're trying to make her into a sex slave, and then one of the Kauravas starts trying to undress her, pulling off her sari, but Draupadi, like, unlike her husband, she like prays to Krishna for help. He's not there, but he obviously can see everything, and he comes to her aid. So no matter how many times they like try to like pull the layers of her sari off of her, she remains fully clothed and modest in the court. And then they go into exile after that very dramatic game of dice. And so this war, which they eventually get into, is called the Mahabharata. It goes on for 18 days, and it's India's national epic, 9 times longer than the Iliad and Odyssey combined. Krishna plays the role of Arjuna's charioteer during the epic battle. To show his great kindness, he puts a protective covering over a mother bird in her nest before the battle begins, so the fighting won't disturb her home or inadvertently slaughter her and her young. Arjuna, Krishna's favorite of the Pandava brothers and his best friend, gets cold feet before the battle is set to begin. He sees the ranks drawn and ready, yet he's having second thoughts about slaughtering his own kinsmen. He sees these people as fathers, sons, uncles, good people on another side, not as people who deserve to be cut down just because of a family feud that's blossomed out of control. Krishna urges him to take heart and delivers one of the most beautiful sermons ever, the Bhagavad Gita, which means simply, the Song of God. Arjuna has always viewed his best friend Krishna as an extraordinary man, but never before has he realized he's God incarnate. Seeing him reveal himself as Vishnu in all of his glory and divine attributes is too much for him to handle. It's overwhelming for his mere mortal's eyes, and Arjuna begs him to go back to his safe, familiar form as Krishna. The sermon much cheers Arjuna and makes him ready to fight, as well as teaching him many other things unrelated to warfare and bloodshed. And of course, the Bhagavad Gita is like a very common book to find in bookstores. Very popular, one of the best known Hindu tracts. Like, you can obviously buy it separate from the Mahabharata, and I very highly recommend it, but you do need to get the correct translation. There are some pretty terrible translations out there, and that one really awful translation with a subtitle as it is. People have joked a better translation subtitle for that book would be As It Is Not, because it's just so absolutely horrible and political and just not at all really what's written in the actual text. Well, no surprise, the virtuous Pandavas win the war, but not without a good deal of bloodshed, slaying of close kinsmen, and heartbreak of everyone involved. The mothers and wives on the Kaurava side are particularly driven insane, as all 100 of the brothers are lying dead and murdered. Particularly, well, I'm not going to reveal any spoilers if you haven't read this, but there are 4 deaths on the other side in particular, which are particularly painful for the Pandavas to bear. They were virtuous, but they had the rotten luck of being trapped into fighting for the evil branch of the family, because they happened to be born into it. And they were only killed because of sneaky strategies which Krishna himself ordered done, despite protests. And a number of other people on the Pandava side themselves are, struck dead during the battle, which is totally heart-shattering to them, even though they accept it as part of a divine plan. The parents of the evil Kauravas spend the rest of their lives wandering like ascetics, along with Kunti, and later die calmly in a forest fire. And I believe Gandhari removes her blindfold at one point during the wandering, and maybe it was during the forest fire, so she can actually finally see something. Or maybe I'm sorry, I just it's been a long time since I read this, but I do know she sees something at one point, regardless of whether she takes her blindfold off. The war was a foreboding of more and more evil things to come, and indeed, soon after, the horrible age of Kali Yuga begins, with people growing less religious, more evil, disrespectful, hateful, and not following the teachings Krishna has been spreading during his current avatar. And according to Hindu beliefs, we are still in the age of Kali Yuga, which will end when there's one final battle between good and evil, and Vishnu takes on his final avatar. I'd speak about that later. Krishna knows this means the end of his latest sojourn on Earth is coming to a close. And several decades after the war ends, he's accidentally wounded by a hunter with an arrow. The archer is mortified to see what he's done, but the 125-year-old Krishna reassures him that it was a good thing and supposed to have happened. He passes on and achieves his own enlightenment and end of days. It's also time for the Pandava brothers to go. The world has become too evil for good, heroic people like them to still be here. They're taken on an arduous trek, along with their wife Draupadi and a stray dog, up to where they're supposed to ascend to paradise from the top of the mountain. And I did tell this story in my book, Little Ragdoll. Adisha tells it to her sister Justine during the beginning of a particularly difficult, horrible, unforeseen test for them, and it's just like a beautiful, wonderful story. It, like, just gives me goosebumps thinking about it. It's just so like beautiful and powerful. This is one of the most beautiful stories in mythology I can think of. Yudhisthira, the oldest brother, sees his wife and younger brothers all dropping dead from exhaustion, but he keeps on going. He's the only one left, and at the end of the journey, he refuses to part from the dog tagging along with him. Upon being reminded that he didn't seem to care about his own brothers and wife, yet cares so much about some animal he's never even seen before, he retorts that one should show kindness to all, and that it was time for his brothers to pass on anyway because, they're so old. It turns out that the dog is his father, the sun god, an animal incarnation, and he's rewarded for his exemplary kindness and refusal to judge someone on the basis of a lowly avatar. And that happens in many religious stories, like, someone who looks like a lowly peasant or a hermit turns out to be like, Jesus, a saint, or like a Hindu god, or like Elijah the prophet, and they're like richly rewarded because they didn't judge. They just showed, love and hospitality to someone who is presumed to be, so lowly. Yudhisthira is shown into paradise and given a look at his brothers in Draupadi. He sees they're in agony and being tortured in hell, while the wicked Kauravas are in paradise, and he insists on joining his brothers, feeling it's all part of a plan. The next thing he knows, all 6 of them are in the real paradise, and hell was just an illusion. One final test to demonstrate their magnanimous character. The good guys win in this story. Krishna's 8th avatar teaches us how to relate to the divine in a myriad of ways beyond the, predictable, like familiar Western stuff of like an old man and a king. Krishna is a warrior, a king. Well, obviously, like the Western conception of God is as a king, but like Krishna is like, a physical king reigning on the earth, and he is also like a father, a son, a lover, a sneaky little boy. Particularly, he likes to get into the butter, the ghee, like that's one of the like tricks he's doing on constantly mischievously stealing the ghee from his foster parents and other people who live around the town. An adorable baby, an old man, best friend, counselor, so much more than the way Westerners are used to seeing God in art or just like relating in imagery. He also realizes that not everyone will come to him as Vishnu, just like when Arjuna is unable to bear the sight of his best friend in all his divine glory. He taught that however you see him, want him, need him, visualize him to be, is how he shall come to you. The grain of rice, a rock, a female deity, the traditional view of God in the West, a leaf, the clouds, or how you experience the divine, then there Krishna is, and the form you feel represents God to you. He has many names and forms, as many as there are different religions and denominations, yet they all ultimately lead back up to him. This isn't some sectarian or local village God. However you see God is how Krishna manifests himself in your life. So thank you very much for listening. I really loved reading this book when I was 22 years old. It was like very influential in my life. As I said, reawakened my interest in Hinduism. I would highly recommend it. I believe it's still in print, and Ms. Vanamali has also wrote a similar book about the life of Rama, but that's unfortunately out of print. But you can find many other versions and translations of the Ramayana. I might be doing my own review of the version I read soon, and I'd like to, I think my next vlog will be like reviewing this book, which I'm currently reading almost to the end of. It's about a young woman from Kenya, her courageous fight to like escape FGM and like totally like discontinue it in her Maasai village. And so look forward to that very soon, even though it's of course a very serious, sobering topic. And maybe next week I will do some Dantean vlogs and other book reviews and such. So thank you very much for listening. Please consider liking, subscribing, commenting, and sharing. See you guys very soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.